Okay, it is Wednesday, February the 24th, and 2021, and welcome to week number 3 of Drugs and Crime. I'm Professor Richard Wright, and you all know that by now. And I'm going to talk to you tonight about the assignments for this week coming up. Okay, so let's go ahead and share my screen. Okay, let's move that up there. Okay, so let's go down. Again, there's my video. I hope many of you have seen that. And then now here's our schedule for our weekly lectures. We are in week number 3. We have entered the halfway point. Week number 1 and 2 lectures here. Tonight I will move lectures 3, week 3, under here as well. Okay. And then, as I have done before, I've added the rubric here on this page, on the cover page, for the written assignment, connection between drugs, mental health, and crime. And you'll be able to take a look at the rubric there. Notice that if you this rubric, the only way you're going to be able to see the additional, if I click, well, you can't do this, but you should be able to see it on your own. This is the entire rubric itself. Notice again my section that I asked you to pay close attention to. So I'm not going to go over that in detail, but I'm going to cover it in just a few minutes when I get to the assignment. But just pointing out to you that this is another place that you can actually see the rubric. Let's take a look at the course calendar. Hope everybody's doing okay. Getting better here. It's a little warmer here than it was last week. Last week we had sub-zero temperatures here in Chicago. And here you can see, here's where we are, the 24th. Your reading assignment that was given. Chapters 3 and 4, I sent the PowerPoints. You should have them. And then this tells you what information in the module. The initial post was due last night. Enforcement or treatment. And then our lab lecture tonight. Reply post due Saturday, 11:59 p.m. Central Standard. You know that already. Then your quiz, which is timed, which I encourage students to take on Sundays after you've gone through everything and prepared. And then your written assignment, which is in the rubric and module, which I've kind of previewed a little bit. Connection between drugs, mental health, and crime. continue on. As you can see that the course actually ends shortly after the 19th is the date, the last day of class, not the 20th, not the 21st, as some people might err in. But the people that don't look at the video or attend the videos, they might not realize that or forget it, or don't pay attention to the calendar. But the 19th is the very, very last day. Now, notice something. When you get to Sunday, which is the 28th, you'll have just 2 more Sundays and this course will be over. Okay. Yep. So we end on the 19th, then we're off and completed with the winter quarter. And then we move into spring quarter, which we start April 5th, Monday, April 5th. All right, so there's no one who should not be aware of when the quarter ends. Let's go back to the course homepage. And let's look at the announcement. So the announcement this week, that your regular weekly announcement tells you that the topic this week is policy and social trends, mental health, and criminal behavior. Again, chapters 3 and 4 of the textbook, Drugs, Crime, and Justice, which again, I sent you the PowerPoint. And then these topics that are bullet pointed in here. Co-occurring mental illness and substance use disorders, a guide, diagnosis, and treatment, a cure for crime, can mental health treatment diversion reduce crime among youth, predictors of assessing substance abuse services among individuals with mental disorders released from correctional custody, substance abuse and mental illness challenges for interventions. Okay, those are the readings. And then there's the activities, mental health and risk factors for substance abuse and addiction, enforcement policies on drugs and crime, influence of social trends on drug-related policy, and then the knowledge check. And again, this is a reminder of when the lecture takes place. Again, your discussion post, social policies and trends, again, due yesterday, and then Saturday, 11:59 p.m. Central Standard. And then your written assignment, due Sunday, the 28th, connection between drugs, mental health, and crime, and the quiz. We'll be talking about the connection between drugs, mental health, and crime a little bit tonight. I always talk about that a lot in class. And then you know my motto, you know where that came from. So let's go into the module. Okay. Module 3. Again, I remind you, use the drugs and crime course guide that I mentioned during week 1. And let's look at the assignments. So again, here's your discussion, enforcement or treatment. And there's something that you'd read, optimal dynamic allocation of treatment and enforcement in illicit drug control. And then for your initial post, select either enforcement or treatment and rehabilitation. And then follow these bullet points that are listed here as well. And then for your reply posts, select a peers post and address the following issues, the 3 at the bullet points here. Okay. I don't have tell you this, but provide constructive, insightful, and meaningful feedback for peers. Nobody has done anything any different than that. Then here's your written assignment for the week. So again, using that Dave's life circumstances scenario that I shared with you for the week one. And so you're going to address 3 points. Describe the connection between mental health and the self-medication phenomenon. Identify how this connection impacts Dave. Summarize the risk factors for criminal behavior to substance abuse and mental illness. Identify Dave's risk factors. Explain the relationship between substance abuse and criminal behavior. Identify the relationship in this scenario. Provide, it says, at least one credible source. I do encourage you to try to do more than one, but at least one. It makes your papers better because, again, remember what the purpose is of credible sources is. That is to support the statements that are contained in your written assignments. And again, APA formatted, you know what that means, but in case you forgot, cover page, Roman 12, double space, citations in the body, and references at the end. Again, we encourage you, don't just give me one credible source, because there are going to be statements in your paper that you're going to write, because this is going to be a two-page minimum paper. 2-page minimum paper. One citation does not really adequately cover the requirements that I expect of each of my students, because I've stressed before and mentioned again as we looked at that academic integrity video during week 1, cite your sources. Remember, where you get information from, give credit for it. So if you're writing a paper with just one, and then you're going to have 2 pages, and you don't have but one, maybe at the beginning or the middle at the end, to me, that's not good. That's not good. And when they set this up, that's one of the issues I pointed out to them. The developers of the course, that says it says at least one. And the point matter is that they really didn't mean just one, because it cuts against what I'm saying in terms of providing support. It's a habit that you want to develop and continue. I don't want you to get into the habit of supplying just one, unless your paper just contains statements that you know about, which I doubt it, and you're not going to repeat the facts over and over and over, because the key thing is to tie the facts in to the issues that you're writing about. And that's the way that you should learn to develop as a habit, having your papers done. So let's look at the rubric again and look at it more in detail for 50 points. And you can see the rubric here. So once again, you can see the variation between mastery and emerging. Half the number of points, all the way down, half the number of points, half the number of points, half the number of points or less. Same down here. So you got 1 to 4. So be aware, and if you don't have any credible sources, it's going to be difficult to do this. Exemplary or accurate, or either just basic is where you might have 1. Exemplary description of the connection between mental health and self-medication phenomenon with thorough. It says thorough details. And to have thorough details, it would behoove you to have a source to support your statements. Again, I say this over and over and over. And so when I grade your papers, I'm going to grade them that way. And pay attention to this column. And as I said before, try to act as if these other three columns don't exist. Unless you just want to get D's and F's over here. C over here. We already talked about that at the beginning of this course. This is B. This is A. And you want to work within these ranks right in here. So mental health and self-medication for 14 total points. The risk factors involved. Exemplary summary of risk factors due to substance abuse with thorough details. Notice the word thorough is included in here. And the point of the matter is that thorough is in here. So if you're going to be thorough, and how do you know if you're thorough? Thoroughness is measured by if I can pick up your paper, I don't know nothing about the topic, and I can get a good understanding about it. Substance abuse and criminal behavior. Exemplary explanation between substance abuse and criminal behavior with details. On the relationship in Dave's scenario. And then credible sources. Notice if you don't have any credible sources, you're going to get 1 point in this area. Credible sources are cited, and they got to be cited properly with APA. Look what happens if you have attempted APA. You get 2 points. Attempted credible sources with minor errors, but with no errors. So you should know how to use APA at this point. And then finally, professional language in 2 to 3 pages. So if your paper falls in less than 2 pages, I'm going to say you need more details and information, and you're going to end up over here. Did not meet the 2 to 3 page. Okay. Professional language used in 2 to 3 page errors, but still able to understand the point of views. Most of the time when you don't have the 2 to 3 page, you fit over in this category. But don't do that. Aim over here again. Any questions about the written assignment? Type in the chat box if there are. If there aren't, type in the chat box, say no. Any? Okay, all right. Very good. Okay, I see you again, Xu Yang from last night. Yeah, we had a visitor last night in Introduction to Criminal Law that Xu Yang is in also, and she's not here tonight, but it was kind of funny how that went. But anyway, if you want to come on Monday nights and see what the other topic is, you can come as a guest. It's okay. All right. So we were all set there. And then we come down to the quiz. It is timed, 30 minutes. And you already know how that works because you've had 2 of these already. You know that you agree to abide by the academic misconduct policy and don't have notes. Don't use things like this. sticky notes. Don't use things like this, pads where you've written down things. It's just like if you're in class and physically in a residential basis, and I said, clear your desk. That's the same way you should take these as well. Don't have any additional screens open and things like that. You know already. And then your live classroom lecture, that's also due. And all of these are due, all three of these are due on the 28th. So let's talk about the topic of the night. Start out by talking about mental health and the risk factors. As you will discover from this class, that the title of the course kind of tips off a problem that we faced in criminal justice, and that is the effects that drugs have on committing crime. Individuals commit crimes to support their drug habits. And there she is. Welcome. Good to see you again. I was just talking about you a few minutes ago that you came out to say hello yesterday. You couldn't wait to get into the lecture, so you came on Monday. Good to see you again. So, yeah, I hear you. I hear you. And so, mental, as I said, drugs and crime go hand in hand. People commit crimes to support their drug habits. I've been saying that over and over. I said that from week one. I say it in other classes that I teach, such as criminal law. I remind people that if we were able to not legislate against drugs, then if we can help individuals to get the help that they need to rehabilitate them, that is to take them in another direction so that you have no drugs needed. Therefore, individuals who sell drugs, if there's no body who wants to buy them or use them, it would go away. Now that's somebody might say that's a little Pollyannish. Say, well, it's still hope. But how do we do it? We start operating on the basis of meeting the needs of individuals dealing with drugs. And so we add here the mental health aspects of it. And I've said this before, that individuals who have mental health problems and substance abuse problems have double jeopardy and are extremely volatile when it comes to the criminal justice system. And that we can lock people up, give them longer sentences, we can write all of the laws, but until we deal with the issue of mental health, it's not going to help. So let's say we deal with the substance abuse aspect of a person who has a mental health problem, and we let them out with a mental health problem. That doesn't take care of the problem. That doesn't take care of it at all. So the fact of the matter is that we need to meet the needs of individuals in addressing straight up mental health. Mental health is also a crisis when it comes to other things, such as, for example, guns and weapons. And also, think about it, the rationalization that some people demonstrate. I take the point that there are people who have a mental health problem who will see something taking place and say it's one thing, that it's something else. Not to misname it, but that's their mental perception about what's going on. It's like, for example, let me apply an example. If you commit a crime against an individual based on that individual's race, sex, religion, national origin, then that crime could be classified as what we call a hate crime. Well, committing the crime itself is not good, but because of the individual's mental health stage, they would operate and use that race, sex, religion, or national origin to attack that person and commit a crime like a battery or some kind of assault or aggravated battery, or even mayhem, murdering and killing an individual just because of those things that I said before: the race, sex, sexual preference. Individuals who are involved with LGBT run across those kinds of crimes. And so there's some elements of it, and we need to address these things. As I already said, is that the opioid and the use of methamphetamines creates a problem. For example, individuals who would normally be healthy may or may not commit crimes, but if they are involved with using painkillers, as simple as that, can be something that leads, and we'll talk about that in some weeks to come. I'm just kind of like tying it into the discussion today about drug use and mental health, and that the use of those painkillers can lead a person to driving under the influence. For example, Tiger Woods, as we all know, was in an accident. Fortunately, he lived through it. He has some physical issues, but a few years back, he was driving under the influence, but he was pretty much tied into opioid addiction, which, because as you already know, he had a number of surgeries, and so they get painkillers, and then those painkillers are gateway or graduate you to eventually using opioids. And so then we develop a problem. Well, that's what happens in our society. So, but look at some of the information here in this module. It says that in America, of all the recorded mental health patients, notice what it says: 38% use alcohol or cocaine and smoke cigarettes. Now, those first two are very deadly to those individuals and people around them. And that's what I was talking about a few minutes ago. Driving or doing anything else under the use of these items. And cocaine, and I've already shared my position on cocaine based on the fact that I have one less sister who overdosed in '94 on cocaine. So it's a very serious thing. And as I said, I was the village attorney, police officer, investigator in a town that was called Ford Heights, south suburbs of Chicago, which was known as, and still is, as the crack cocaine capital of the south suburbs. The reason why it's decreasing its name is because a lot of the houses that existed back in the 70s, 80s, well, in the 70s it was called East Chicago Heights, then it became Ford Heights, I believe in the late 80s or early 90s, as the name, I think it was early 80s. So anyway, the point of the matter is that there were houses that were used to cook the cocaine, the crack. And so anyway, the point of the matter is um, um, there were problems. And so these percentages only scrape the surface. Did you hear me? Of drug users that end up in prison. Therefore, when they continuously end up in prison, you reach the overpopulation stage. And if they're not treated, they're kept a number of years, released, then they be recidivists because the problem was never addressed and they come back. And so um, um, opioids, methamphetamines, marijuana. Interestingly enough, marijuana is rapidly becoming a legal drug in most jurisdictions. It's legal here in Illinois. In the states where you guys are, is marijuana legal? Not in Minnesota. Okay. Okay. Yeah. But that you're all you guys are in Minnesota then, right? Okay. So yeah. Yeah. So yep. So yeah, everybody's up there in that cold weather. Oh God, I've shared before that I had family up there in good old Hennepin County. Uh, it's summer. It's summer where? Oh, you're Faith. You're in Minnesota too, though, aren't you? Oh, you mean it's warmer up there in Minnesota? Okay. Yeah. Okay. That's a heat wave. Well, that's kind of like what we say here. Um, let's see. The temperature here in our area is right now. What's the temperature? Alexa, what's the temperature in Plainfield?
Right now, it's 30 degrees Fahrenheit. Tonight, expect a low of 18 degrees. Enjoy your night.
Okay. I don't know if you can hear that. Did you hear Alexa? Did you hear what she said? Yeah. Yeah. Alexa. Yeah. She says, yep, 30 degrees. Yeah. But the point of the matter is after you've had below zero temperatures, it's kind of funny. You feel like it's a heat wave, but yeah. So I hear you. So anyway, the fact of the matter is that marijuana is being legalized across the country, uh, and I'm not really that excited about it because I'm not about there are certain protective mechanisms for how they sell it, but the drug itself is, I don't care what nobody says, it's a gateway drug. I don't use it. I'm 70. They say that there are people who use it for medicinal purposes because they have glaucoma um, or some other health issue that it helped. We had a quarterback years ago who quarterbacked for the Chicago Bears. He was already kind of wild, and I got to know him because I knew the '85 Bears. Jim McMahon, we called him the Punky QB. Well, Jim moved away from Illinois because they didn't have it legalized, and he moved somewhere else where it was legalized just to be able to get it because he said he needed it. And he did have some eye problems because he always wore dark glasses, and there was a story behind that that I won't get into as to why he wore the dark glass, but it was because of a childhood accident. But my point being is that marijuana itself uh, doesn't help. Uh, Jim was already out there. We didn't need marijuana to be given to people like that. But then they said, yeah, because he has vision problems. But you know what I'm saying. You guys get my point. So what we do is we open up a can of worms on the criminal end, because what happens is marijuana leads to other substances that are abused. And so when you have those with mental illness using marijuana, that just again aggravates the situation. And it deals with, in the field of psychology, it says when one suffers from mental health disorders along with substance abuse, it is called dual diagnosis. Well, I already said double jeopardy, and together lead to complicated issues. Well, that's kind of like another way of saying what I've already said to you guys. So let's look at, they have these little charts that show how co-occurring disorders, how mental health and substance abuse lead to morbidity, where two or more disorders occur in that person. We've been talking about that. So if you have a person who has a mental illness who uses marijuana, they end up in here. Okay. And then you can look at, this is the age breakdown. So I'm not going to get over this. Mental health and self-medication. I've already kind of talked about that, where people will do things such as, oh, I'm a social drinker, using alcohol, just as they say too, I have to have a drink. You ever hear people say, oh man, this was just such a tough situation, I gotta go have me a drink so I can deal with it? Well, that's teetering on a situation where a person can advance. Now, they say, oh, professor, you say that because you're a pastor. I've never been a drinker. And that was long before I even thought of being a pastor. I wasn't even in church. As I said, somebody church wasn't in me. But I did not drink alcohol. I did not use drugs. But I was around people who got high from marijuana, who smoked cigarettes as well. So the key thing is that it can help to elevate and aggravate a person who has a mentally ill situation. It says self-medication does little to eliminate mental health issues. That's an understatement. um, as it says, coming down from drug-induced feelings can deepen the mental problems. And, unstable individuals, paranoia, delusion, depression, suicide, things of that nature. Um, so, and then they talk about the impairment of judgment due to alcohol or drug abuse and mental health issues. I will take a certain medication. Like, for example, if I was taking some of these cough syrups, they would really mess me up, and I would go to sleep. So I would not dare drive or either go out in the public with these, because I'd be drowsy and not functioning optimal as I need to be functioning when I'm driving, of course, or when I'm out in the public. So once victimized by a traumatic event like assault, robbery, or rape, or other personal conflicts, the combination of substance abuse and circumstances can lead to new and more severe mental health challenges. I am aware, my wife was telling me that we know that's dear to us, got caught in a situation of violence, but they were high. They were getting high, the individuals. Anyway, so it's not so good. The risk factors for addiction, and then they talk about the various factors that are broken down on a biological level, psychological level, and environmental. And I'm just going to click on just a few of these for now. So the biological, usual early response to substance or experiences, easy to develop a tolerance to alcohol. Oh, I can drink and drive. Oh, I'm okay. I got control of situation. Attention deficit issues, ADD and AHD, biological mood disorders, depression and bipolarism. Um, I've run into these days more bipolar people than I ever ran into in my life when I was much younger, but that's because of the inclusion of drugs like cocaine and then bringing crack particularly and now we deal with heroin and the opioids, and then you got these things like um, we talked about earlier, these um, K2 spice, bath salts, and things like that. And then there's addiction among biological family members that they say is passed on. So then when there are the psychological aspects, the results, you have low self-esteem, passivity. I'll get around to it when I get around to it, or you know, post traumatic stress disorders, which can happen in people who went into the military, but people who are abused, who find themselves in that situation because they do an escape mechanism from their environment and the circumstances that they operate under. And then looking at the environment itself, combining with the psychological, uh, you have ready access to the substance or the experience, abusive home environment. Uh, it's okay with your peers because people get high, hang around with people who get high, period. Um, Misperception of peer norms. Oh, it's okay. We're just doing our own thing. We're not hurting anybody. Yes, you are. You're hurting yourself, and you can hurt your family members, and you can eventually hurt other individuals because of the crimes that could come about from getting the drugs that you need to support habits. Membership in the alienated, oppressed, or marginalized group. There's a lot of that going on around this country right now, as far as I'm concerned, with some of the theories that people have. I'm not getting political when I start talking about these conspiracy theories, but there's something to it. I'm going to tell you something, and I mean what I'm about to say. I'm not saying this to offend anybody, but I am saying it because I believe it's true. If you research a lot of people who have some of these conspiracy theories, after a totally ignoring fact, you will find that oftentimes those individuals are placed in environments where there's drug and or alcohol use. Pay attention to that. Like, for example, somebody, I'd hear people say, and again, this is not a political statement, oh, coronavirus is a hoax. Tell that to the 500,000 plus people. Tell that to family members who survived coronavirus, but now live with the effects of not having their brains functioning properly. Their whole life has been changed. So it puts them in a disability stage. This thing is real. And as I told somebody, you can't see it, but you can feel it and the effects of it. So what happens is people find themselves escaping from it. But I'm telling you, I promise you, if you look into those circles, if people tell the truth, there's some kind of drug or alcohol or mental health issues involved in people who reach those positions and statements. And many are in um, responsible positions, but that's dangerous. So anyway, um, life events such as, for example, individuals find themselves in situations where they lived a traumatic event. You don't have to tell me about living a traumatic event. You already know that I know. But I made a choice. But guess what? I'm a minority in that area because most people who underwent what I went through would turn to drugs, as my sibling did, or alcohol. All of them drank at one time or another, and some still do, but I never did. And again, people always, oh, you're a reverend and a pastor. Irrelevant, immaterial, has nothing to do with it. That's my life. Even when let me tell you guys, I used to hang out with people at the clubs because the ladies were there. But I, you know, what do you want to drink, counselor? Give me a 7-Up on the rocks. What you want in it? Maybe put a lemon or a cherry in it. Everybody know what a Shirley Temple is? You ever heard of a Shirley Temple? Any of you guys? You ever heard of that? Yeah. And it's a non-alcoholic drink. Or either I would go and I would have them to put a little, what's that stuff that makes it red and sweet in your grenadine. There you go. Thanks, Trinity. Yeah. Yeah. Put a little grenadine in mine. And then, and I used to sit there and I'd have my little straw and I'd be sitting there and people be drinking and after a while, it says, how many drinks you gonna have, counselor? I said, I can have as many as I want. Funny story, years ago, I went to a conference going back to 69 and I was in Teaneck, New Jersey. And they had a conference and they had this fountain and, I saw the fountain. I said, oh, let me taste this. So, oh, it tastes like lemonade. Well, guess what they were? I didn't know this until the next day. They were frozen daiquiris. So they told me I did some stuff. I guess if they had cameras back in those days, you would probably be able to capture it and see it. They say I did some stuff on the dance floor. Well, I just remember waking up the next day in my clothes and had the worst headache ever. But I didn't know. I didn't know. But anyway, I'm saying all that to say that I didn't do that because I was trying to enjoy myself, to relax myself. I thought I was just drinking something that tasted good, not realizing it. So, oh God. But anyway, I still laugh about that even to this day. But the life events that you engage in deal with risk factors for addiction as well. And then, it gives a picture over here of how a person ends up, you know, and the things that take place. Look at some of the factors that take place, such as going from chaotic home environment, ineffective parenting, um, academic failure. That's not that because many students that fail are doing it because of that, but I have known of students seriously um, who have opened up to me and said, Professor, it just got so heavy that I had to have a drink, and it just made me just want to delay, procrastinate. Now, I'm not saying that everybody who procrastinates falls into that category, but that's one of the signs. poor social coping skills, and it goes on down. Parental substance abuse. Um, if you have a parent and they expose you to it, you might. A gentleman that wrote a book that I've talked about in previous classes that I'm going to, let me get it for you. Give me a minute. It's a book here called From Dope to Hope. It's a man in recovery, Tim Ryan. You can get this book on Amazon. I got the book from Tim Ryan himself, who came to Rasmussen in Romeoville, and he was a recovering addict and became a substance abuse counselor. But one of the problems that he had, and he writes about in his book, is one of the issues that was a problem for him, is that he his son, he couldn't save him. His son overdosed, and that's one of the regrets that he has in life. And that goes to the parental substance abuse issue. Some things that protect you from that are strong family bonds, parental engagement in that child's life, clear expectations. That's why sometimes my kids don't understand why I'm so tough. Academic success. Yes, that's my thing that I teach and preach and stand on for all of my students, and my hope and desire for each and every one of you guys. Strong bonds with um, organizations such as school, community, and the church. And you know, I'm involved with all of those, the school, especially the church, being a pastor, and conventional norms about understanding what drugs and alcohol do. And you're getting that education in this course. And so substance abuse and the criminal justice system start out with juveniles, and you deal with individuals who have um, 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 mental health issues, um, and as it talks about an increased risk for substance use disorders is associated with untreated juvenile ADHD. Uh, and I was a special ed teacher for a number of years, and I had several ADHD students that I dealt with. And there were some very serious issues that would take place in the classroom that I had to deal with. So um, it says, although not an evidence-based conclusion, many studies suggest that ADHD medications don't increase the risk of substance use disorder. I'm not sure about that. Like giving individuals, what was the name of that? There was one drug that um, several of my, Ritalin is a common drug that's used. And I know people who have advanced from that grew into adults that moved on to using cocaine and even other substances after that. So you can take a look at all of this information here as well. So you see there's an issue. So now look at this. Elliot Ness, who happened to be a real person who was in Chicago and was the arch rival to Al Capone, and dealt with Prohibition during the Prohibition era, was a graduate of my high school in the 20s, the real Elliot Ness. And some of you have seen the movie with Kevin Costner and Sean Connery and Robert De Niro, where he was Al Capone. But when Prohibition ended, that made drinking alcohol or selling alcohol legal. And it talks about that the 18th Amendment of the Constitution prohibited alcohol in 1919. And so um, uh, the 21st Amendment was adopted 13 years, less than 13 years, as demand for alcohol and a social acceptance created political influence to repeal the 18th Amendment, thus ending prohibition. So, excuse me, so then the changes that have taken place when it comes to dealing with that is shifting the age to consume alcohol to age 21. And the substance use and abuse issues regarding alcohol have been some minimal adjustments based on sentencing for alcohol offenses, such as people losing their license, going to jail. And so I'm not going to go over this, but you can take time, click on this, and so you can't hear this because I have my headphones on, but click on each of these dates and then you'll learn more about that as well. And you'll find some very interesting things. So we come to the war on drugs, which is not one of my favorite topics for dealing with drug problems, as the war on drugs pretty much dealt with passing legislation and laws and trying to control the cocaine. Notice it says in the 70s and 80s, the response by lawmakers to a drug-related crime was the war on drugs, criminalizing drugs and substance abuse. There we go with the overcrowding. Laws were passed imposing mandatory sentencing. And, you know, I'm not opposed to a mandatory sentencing for dealers, but I am opposed to it when it comes to users because they're sick. And so it says, as a result, sentencing disparities were created for possession of powder and crack cocaine. Remember, that's a cheap high. And there were many people in communities throughout the country, and there was a disparate impact in the minority communities in urban areas with crack cocaine, and resulted in what it says here: disproportionately incarcerating minorities and those with mental health issues. Those were the people who use these things in high proportions, where they were not able to cope or deal with situations. Crack cocaine was cheap enough to be a street drug, as I was telling you about my experiences with it as a professional. And it gave users a mental high that helped them manage their feelings or mental issues for a little while. And what would happen is people would go and they'd increase the amount of crack cocaine. And eventually what the crack cocaine did is, when I was in the police academy, I never forget this video. They showed us how the heart would be like a balloon, and it would just, you know, more of the crack, and the heart would get expand, and finally it would burst just like a balloon, and the person would die. That's what happened with my sister. And so, so the point of the matter is that we started locking people up, putting them away, but we did not get the help that I said that needs to be. So then in the 90s and the 2000s, we began to recognize that there was a connection, excuse me, between using drugs, abuse, addiction, and mental health. And so now we advocate in criminal justice, as I teach in my classes, that it's a illness. And so what happens is lawmakers, criminal justice professionals, public health, mental health professionals advocate treatment and rehabilitation, which is what I talk about a whole lot. And I'm glad to hear that our president takes that same position. It is something that will help us in this country. It says where possible, a prison sentence for drug offenders, especially those mental issues, since they are likely to recidivate. Yeah, because you're not addressing the issues involved. So we're moving to things like um, dealing with um, diversion and intervention and helping individuals. We do deflection. I um, will share with you coming up soon the deflection policy of Illinois that came about. And as a matter of fact, I'll probably just send it to you tonight in email, and you can see how we are moving towards helping individuals who come to law enforcement with a problem instead of locking them up, but to direct them to get treatment. Then there's some, as we already talked about, the disparity involving uh, races as well. So we reached the point of dealing with social needs. Says President Obama signed Durbin's fair sentencing. Dick Durbin is one of our great senators. He's now the majority whip in the Senate since the Democrats control the Senate, kind of. So fair sentencing and helping to address the issues that individuals have to uh, point our legislation to apply rehabilitation. Okay, interesting. Excuse me. The Fair Sentencing Act would have eliminated the disparity. It would have been really, really good. Uh, but it was watered down, and then it was passed because there were individuals like, think about the Jeff Sessions, Lindsey Graham, just to name a two. Orrin Hatch, who's no longer in the Senate. Tom Coburn, I don't think is in the Senate. Anyway, the point of the matter is that um, the legislation would eliminate the mandatory minimum sentence for simple possession of crack cocaine. The only mandatory minimum sentence for simple possession of a drug for a first-line offender. And Senator Durbin, our senator, issued a press release that if you ever get a chance to take a look at it, you'll see what the position was. So anyway, the fact of the matter is that um, there are people who look at it from the perspective not as a sickness, but want to lock people up. So we go down and deal with rehabilitation versus punishment. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. We have drug courts. I represent people in drug courts, and one of the common dispositions in drug courts for individuals was to get treatment as part of a plea that would generally be entered. And then they go and tell you the history of drug courts and all of this. Okay. So read that and you get a chance. And then your knowledge check. This is for you. Choose the best answer and submit. Um, and they'll, ask patients with uh, schizophrenia tend to have high rates of which of these? Which of these would you think? Caffeine, alcohol and tobacco use, weight loss, or sleep disorders? Which one do you think? Sleep disorders? Okay, you think that's the best answer? Anybody else? Let's try sleep disorders. I know what the outcome's going to be. That's not right. I didn't think so. This is the one that I would choose. Yep. So, so you can see. And then during the Obama administration, which pact was signed into law as relates to sentencing? Fair Sentencing Act. We just talked about that. And so you can go through each of these and learn more about it. So I'm not going to stay with these, okay? So that's it. Any questions? Any questions? Okay. None from Trinity. Anybody else? Any questions? Okay. That's okay. That's okay. Feel free to come on Mondays too. It's okay. I thought it was funny. And I think you probably did. Oh wow. Oh God. Well, you know what, isn't it something yeah, isn't it something that Shu Yang says criminal law is more fun than dealing with drugs and crime. So well, they actually go together. But um, um, isn't it something that I can say, well, I'm happy to hear that your family just has the flu because with you know what I'm saying. Uh, I just somebody asks you you take uh, uh, COVID over the flu, and everybody will pick the flu every time. But stomach flu will make you sick, but COVID will kill you and leave other things. So yeah, I hear you. Well, feel better. I hope your family does feel better with that. It's miserable. It'll cause you to lose some weight. I had the stomach flu before, so I know all about it. Fortunately, in my house we have 4 toilets because there's 4 people here, so we could each go to separate. Uh, yeah, I lived with only one. It wasn't good for me because um, if I'm living with all these females, I had 7 sisters and 1 toilet. So I get that one there. Oh, guys. Well, anyway, that's it for tonight. But before I let you go, I'm going to give you uh, a key phrase, and it's one that we need to um, be cognizant of and recognizing that we need to deal with this issue very seriously to help people. Anybody have any idea of what that topic is that I'm going to give you for the key phrase? You can type in the chat box if you think you know. Hey, you read my mind. You are reading my mind. Yes, mental health. Trinity said she was going to go. Yeah, you take enough classes of mine. Yeah, mental health is because I advocate dealing with that as a serious issue. We as criminal justice professionals must be cognizant of and working. I have a daughter who is a clinical psychologist and works with criminals in that area. So, yep. So I'll see you guys next week, same time. Oh, your sister's a counselor. Oh, yeah. Okay. So you have this scenario. that I'm talking about here. She's in Minnesota. Yeah, yeah. My daughter here's in Illinois. She's at Cook County Jail, uh, dealing with that. So, all right, guys, stay safe, uh, and get those assignments done. Any questions, you know how to reach out to me. Again, I'll see you guys next Tuesday, or those of you who come out on Mondays uh, to see what's going on as well that are not in that class. She's gone already, but she'll, you know, oh, I enjoy teaching. I love teaching my students. My students are my friends. And actually, you guys keep me young. So good night. Good night, all. See you next week.